You have no right to that money. I earned it with my own hands. Ryan's voice thundered through my small living room with a venom I'd never heard before. Behind him, Jessica stood sobbing, one hand pressed against her forehead like she might faint any second. But I just stood there, breathing slowly, and said with perfect calm, "There's something else you need to know, son." The moment those words left my lips, I watched Ryan's expression shift. First came bewilderment, then dread, then that telltale quiver in his fingers that happens when the earth drops away beneath your feet. "But mother," he stammered, his voice cracking, "Jessica and I will have nowhere to go." And right there, in that precise instant, I understood I had prevailed. Because for years upon years, I was the one who shook. I was the one who pleaded. I was the one drowning in fear. But that woman is gone now. My name is Margaret. I'm 65 years old. And 6 months ago, I was a ghost. A ghost to Ryan, a ghost to Jessica, a ghost even to my own reflection. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom home that my late husband Arthur and I purchased 3 decades ago. It wasn't elegant. Watermarks bloomed in the ceiling corners. The kitchen felt cramped and shadowy, but it belonged to me. It was the single place on earth where I still mattered as more than vapor. Arthur passed 7 years ago. He slipped away in sleep, no suffering, no farewells. From that morning forward, my existence became an echo of routine. Rising at 6 o'clock sharp, brewing coffee in that ancient percolator that groaned and wheezed, sweeping identical floors, staring through the same window, waiting for what I couldn't say. Ryan was my sole child, my only blood relation. When Arthur died, I imagined we'd grow closer. I imagined more visits, more phone calls checking in, perhaps even the occasional dinner invitation. But no, Ryan had constructed his world. He had Jessica. He had his career, his social circle, his ambitions, and I was merely an item on his obligation list. A perfunctory call twice monthly, a mandatory appearance at Thanksgiving. Nothing beyond that. Initially, I told myself not to take offense. I reminded myself that children mature and depart. That possessiveness would be wrong. But loneliness has weight. It presses like iron against your ribs, sinking you gradually. So gradually you don't notice until breathing becomes impossible. Ryan's appearances followed a script. The doorbell would chime. He'd enter without warmth. He'd collapse onto the sofa, phone already in his palm. "Hey, Ma, how've you been?" "Fine, sweetheart." "And yourself?" "Fine, swamped." Then silence. That suffocating silence punctuated by notification pings. I'd offer coffee. He'd decline, citing time constraints. I'd inquire about Jessica. He'd grunt single syllables. I'd attempt sharing something from my day, my neighbor's news, anything. And he'd check his watch. Always checking his watch, as though every moment beside me was time stolen from his actual existence. But I smiled. Always smiled. Because he was my boy. And mothers don't surrender. Mothers persist. Even when it cuts. Even when they're invisible. Jessica seemed different initially. Or that's how she portrayed herself. When Ryan first brought her home, she beamed constantly. She embraced me. She called me Mama in honeyed tones. She arrived with discount supermarket bouquets. And I, so isolated, so starved for warmth, allowed myself the deception. I believed I'd finally have another soul in my life, the daughter I never bore, someone for conversation. But flowers wither, and Jessica's facade crumbled with them. Gradually, I noticed her glances. Those quick assessments she'd cast around my home when she assumed I wasn't watching. Glances that appraised, calculated, measured everything's worth, the walls, the furnishings, the square footage. Then I comprehended. To her, I wasn't human. I was an obstruction between her and her desires. The degradation started subtly. So subtly, I initially dismissed it as imagination. One afternoon, Jessica arrived with Ryan and announced, "Margaret, this sofa is ancient. You really should replace it." I explained I lacked funds for that. She smiled sweetly. "Well, once this place becomes ours, renovations will be our first priority." Becomes ours. As if they'd already decided. As if my death was simply pending paperwork. Another evening, they dined at my table. I'd cooked for hours. I'd prepared the beef stew Ryan adored as a boy, but Jessica barely touched it and commented, "It's rather bland, don't you think, honey?" And my son, my own flesh and blood, nodded without meeting my gaze. They abandoned their plates nearly full. And I, as always, said nothing. Just cleared everything silently while they discussed their plans, their aspirations, their future, a future where I didn't exist. But one moment shattered everything. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the bathroom when I heard Ryan and Jessica arrive unannounced. I heard their voices in the living area, and something in their tone made me freeze. Made me listen. "What do you figure this place is worth?" Jessica asked. "Probably around $240,000, Ryan answered. "With that, we could put down on a real house, a proper one." Jessica's voice brightened with excitement. "But your mother won't sell, will she?" Ryan laughed a hollow sound. "No, but she won't last forever. When she goes, this place is mine. My entire inheritance." Jessica exhaled with relief. "Thank goodness. Because, honestly, I don't know how much longer I can pretend she doesn't irritate me." I felt something shatter internally, something irreparable. I remained in that bathroom, palm covering my mouth to prevent sound. Tears came unbidden, but they weren't sorrow. They were something deeper. The death of illusion. The illusion that my son loved me, that I mattered even marginally. When I finally emerged, they sat on the couch. Jessica smiled brightly. "Margaret, what a surprise. We didn't realize you were here." A lie. They knew perfectly well. They simply didn't care. Ryan never looked up from his phone. I smiled again. Offered coffee. They refused. They lingered 10 minutes and departed. And I sank onto that old couch they despised and asked myself, when did I become this? Someone awaiting death to stop being inconvenient. Hours crawled after they left. I stared at the ceiling, hearing city sounds, cars passing, distant conversations, wind rattling the window. And somewhere between darkness and silence, I made a choice. A choice that would alter everything. I wouldn't keep waiting. I wouldn't remain invisible. I wouldn't surrender my existence to someone merely anticipating my demise. For the first time in 7 years, I felt something resembling fury. But not explosive fury. Cold fury, calculated fury. The fury of someone finally awakening. The following morning, I woke transformed. I can't explain it. Something inside had hardened overnight, as if all those tears had washed away something rotten, leaving space for something new. Something stronger. I rose, made coffee. But this time, I didn't sit gazing out the window as usual. This time, I retrieved an old journal from storage and began writing. I documented everything I could recall. Every humiliation. Every cutting remark. Every contemptuous look. I needed to see it, to understand how blind I'd been. When I finished, I'd filled 7 pages. 7 pages proving I hadn't imagined it, that I wasn't insane, that they'd genuinely reduced me to nothing. But the humiliations continued. In fact, they intensified, as if Ryan and Jessica sensed my transformation and needed to remind me of my position. 3 weeks after that overheard conversation, they visited again, this time with news. "Mother," Ryan said without greeting, "we need to discuss something important. Jessica and I are house hunting. We want to start our family, but prices are outrageous." I nodded, said nothing, simply waited. Then Jessica spoke in that saccharine voice I loathed. "Margaret, we know this place is far too large for you alone. 2 bedrooms for 1 person. Such a waste, don't you agree? Perhaps you could relocate to something smaller, more manageable. And maybe you could sell us this place at a fair price." A family price, naturally. A family price. The words sounded pleasant, but I knew their meaning. They wanted me to give them my sole asset. To surrender the home Arthur and I labored 30 years to pay off simply because they wanted to begin their lives without sacrifice, without the struggle we endured. I inhaled deeply and told them, "I'm not prepared to sell. This place holds too many memories." Ryan scowled. "Mother, don't be unreasonable. You won't need it much longer anyway. At your age, what's the purpose of clinging to material possessions? You should consider your son, your family." Jessica nodded with theatrical tears. "We were genuinely counting on this, Margaret. We'd already made arrangements." Arrangements? They'd planned my life, my home, without consultation. And worse, they stated it as if it were perfectly natural, as if I owed them my existence. I remained silent, didn't argue, simply told them I'd consider it. They departed satisfied, confident I'd eventually yield because I always yielded, always gave them what they wanted. But this time something had shifted. This time, as I closed the door behind them, I didn't feel guilt. I felt resolve. I felt clarity. And I knew precisely what I needed to do. 3 more weeks elapsed. 3 weeks where Ryan telephoned daily, not inquiring about my well-being, not checking if I needed anything, only to pressure me. "Mother, have you reconsidered what we discussed?" "Mother, we've found the perfect house, but we need the down payment immediately." "Mother, don't be difficult." Jessica sent texts, lengthy messages filled with sad emoticons. "Margaret, I understand this is challenging for you, but think about the grandchildren you could have. Don't you want your future grandchildren to have a proper home?" Every message was a blow. Every call a reminder that to them I was merely a means to obtain what they desired. And the fury kept building. Cold, silent, powerful. Then came the moment that changed everything permanently. It was a Thursday. I'd gone to the bank for a routine matter, updating my contact information. Nothing significant. But while waiting, I overheard 2 women conversing. One, younger, was telling the other, my mother-in-law finally sold her property. She purchased a small condo and traveled with the remainder. She says she worked for everyone else her entire life, and now she wants to live for herself. The other woman chuckled. How courageous. I couldn't do that. My family would disown me. The first replied, but it's her money, her life. Why should she require permission? Those words penetrated deep. Why should I require permission? It was my home, my life, my decision. Nobody had gifted it to me. Nobody had contributed a single dollar to the mortgage except Arthur and me. Yet I'd spent months feeling I had no right to do what I wanted with my own property. That somehow I owed everything to Ryan simply for being my son. But that wasn't love. That was manipulation. And I'd allowed them to manipulate me far too long. I left the bank with crystalline clarity, so clear my own courage frightened me. But I couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. It was now or never. That same afternoon, I researched real estate firms online. Found one with excellent reviews, called. A pleasant voice answered, "Good afternoon. How may we assist you?" And I, with my voice trembling slightly, said, "I want to sell my home quickly, without extensive advertising, without many people knowing." The woman asked questions. Location, size, condition. Then she said, "We can send someone tomorrow for an appraisal." "Perfect," I replied, and disconnected. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, feeling my heart hammering. I'd just taken the first step. There was no retreat. The next day, the agent arrived, a woman in her 40s, navy suit and professional demeanor. She toured the home, photographed everything, made notations, and finally told me, "Mrs. Collins, this property could fetch approximately $240,000, perhaps more with minor improvements, but if you want rapid sale as you indicated, we could secure $210,000 within a month." I nodded. "Let's proceed." She looked surprised. "You don't want to consult your family first?" "Most people, no," I interrupted. "I don't need to consult anyone. It's my decision." She smiled, presented documents to sign. Within a week, there was a buyer, a young couple needing to relocate quickly for employment. They offered $205,000 cash. No financing, no complications. I accepted immediately. During this entire period, I told Ryan nothing. He kept calling, kept pressing. "Mother, have you decided? We need an answer. Jessica is extremely anxious." And I'd respond vaguely, "I'm still thinking, sweetheart. Give me more time." He'd grumble in frustration, but didn't push hard because he was certain I'd eventually yield as always. But while he waited confidently, I was signing documents, completing the sale, receiving funds into my account, and searching for a new place for myself, a smaller home. 1 bedroom in a peaceful neighborhood. It cost $70,000. I purchased it outright. No mortgage, no obligations. And the remaining money, over $125,000, I deposited in an investment account the bank recommended. The relocation was swift. I hired a small company, packed only essentials. Clothing, some books, photographs of Arthur, memories that truly mattered. Everything else I sold or donated. I didn't need much. Never had. 3 weeks after making the decision, I was already living in my new home. It was compact, yes, but it had natural light, a functional kitchen, a clean bathroom, and most importantly, it was completely mine. Nobody held a key. Nobody had entered that space before me. It was my sanctuary, my fresh start. And for the first time in years, I felt tranquility. But I knew the tempest was approaching. Ryan still knew nothing. And when he discovered, chaos would erupt. So I prepared. I kept all sale documents in a folder. I printed bank statements showing where the money was. And most importantly, I had secretly recorded recent conversations with Ryan and Jessica. Those conversations where they discussed the apartment as if it already belonged to them. Where they planned what they'd do after I died. Where Jessica complained about pretending to tolerate me. I had all the evidence. And I was ready. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was arranging final books on shelves in my new home when the phone rang. Ryan. His voice sounded strangely cheerful. Mother, hello. Good thing you answered. Jessica and I want to invite you to dinner this Friday. We haven't spent time together in a while. I paused for seconds. Ryan never invited me to dinner. Never. Of course, sweetheart. What time? 7 o'clock. We'll collect you. And don't worry about anything. We're covering everything. I disconnected and knew exactly what was happening. They decided to change tactics. Direct pressure hadn't worked. Now came soft manipulation, false affection gestures, forced kindness. But I was no longer the same naive woman from before. This time I knew precisely what to expect. Friday arrived and I dressed carefully. Wore a burgundy dress I'd purchased years ago but rarely worn. Styled my hair. Applied light makeup. I wanted to appear good, strong. Ryan arrived punctually. He rang the doorbell of the old home, the one no longer mine. I waited several seconds before descending. When I exited the building, I saw him standing beside his car, frowning at his phone. Mother, he called when he spotted me. Why so long? I was about to come up. I needed to prepare, I replied calmly. We got in the car. Jessica was in the passenger seat. She turned to me with an enormous smile. Margaret, so wonderful to see you. You look very elegant. Her words were sugar, but her eyes were ice. We went to an Italian restaurant. Not fancy, but not expensive either. Ryan selected a corner table, away from commotion, away from other patrons. A perfect location for private conversation. We ordered food. Pasta for Jessica, steak for Ryan. I ordered a simple salad. I wasn't hungry. My stomach was knotted. Not from fear, but from anticipation. For the first minutes, they discussed trivial matters. Ryan's work, a friend of Jessica's who'd married, the weather. I just listened, nodded, smiled when necessary, and waited. Because I knew at any moment the real reason for this dinner would emerge. And it did, just as main courses arrived. Ryan wiped his mouth with his napkin and looked directly at me. Mother, we need to discuss something serious. Jessica and I have been thinking extensively, and we're concerned about you. I looked up. Concerned about me? Yes, Jessica said, leaning forward. You're all alone in that large home. At your age, anything could happen. A fall, a medical emergency, and nobody there to assist you. Ryan nodded. That's why we think it would be better if you moved in with us, or if you sell the home and purchase something smaller, safer, closer to us. I said simply. They waited for me to respond with gratitude, with relief, with that submissiveness I'd always shown. But I just sipped water and said, It's very thoughtful of you to worry. I'll consider it. Jessica blinked, confused. But we need an answer soon, Margaret. Ryan and I already found a house. We just need the down payment, and we thought if you sell your home, you could give us a portion as a loan or as an advance on the inheritance. Her words were so shameless, I nearly laughed. An advance on the inheritance, as if my death were a scheduled appointment on their calendar. As if I were merely occupying space until they could collect. I'll consider it, I repeated with identical calm. This time Ryan tensed. Mother, we've been discussing this for months. You can't keep delaying us. I felt fury bubbling in my chest, but I didn't release it. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. Son, it's a significant decision. I can't make it hastily. Give me more time. Jessica released a dramatic sigh. It's just that, Margaret, we were genuinely counting on that money. We already told the property owner we want it. If we don't make the down payment soon, we'll lose it. There's no alternative. Our only option is your home." How convenient, I thought. Their only option was my sacrifice. We finished dinner in uncomfortable silence. Ryan paid the bill with an irritated expression. When they dropped me at my building, Jessica gave me a frigid embrace. "Think about it, Margaret. We don't want to pressure you. We just want what's best for everyone." The following days were an avalanche of messages. Jessica sent photographs of the house they wanted to purchase. "Look, Margaret, it has 4 bedrooms, a yard, a garage. It would be perfect for when we have children. Your grandchildren could play here." Every message was a hook. Every photo was manipulation. They were trying to make me envision a future that would never materialize. Because I knew the truth. I knew if I gave them the money, I'd never see it again. I knew the grandchildren were merely a fantasy to soften me. I knew once I'd served my purpose, they'd discard me as they always had. And I wasn't going to allow them. Not this time. Ryan called too. But his calls were different, less sweet, more demanding. "Mother, I need an answer. Yes or no?" "It's simple." "It's not simple, son. It's my life. My asset. But I'm your son, your only family. I don't owe you my entire existence just because you're my son." There was silence on the other end. Heavy, dangerous silence. "So you're saying you won't help us?" "I'm saying I need time to think." Ryan disconnected without goodbye, and I stared at the phone, feeling the last thread of love I had for him snap completely. Because a son who loves you doesn't pressure you like that. A son who loves you doesn't make you feel guilty for wanting to live your own life. A week later, Jessica appeared at my building unannounced. She rang the doorbell insistently. "Margaret, open up, please. We need to talk." I was about to leave for my new home. I had remaining items to collect. I opened the door cautiously. Jessica's eyes were red. She appeared to have been crying. "May I come in?" We sat in the empty living room. Most furniture was already gone. She looked around, confused, but said nothing. "Margaret," she began, her voice trembling. "I came to apologize. I know we've been very insistent. I know we've pressured you, but we're just desperate. Ryan and I have been saving for years, and it's never enough. Everything is so expensive. And when we thought about your home, we were filled with hope." Hope, what an interesting word to describe greed. Jessica continued, "I don't want you to think we only care about the money. We love you, Margaret. We truly do. And we want you to be part of our lives, to live with us, to be grandmother to our children. But to do that, we need that space. We need that house. And you could make that happen. You could be our salvation." Her words were perfect, rehearsed, but hollow. Because if they truly loved me, they wouldn't be here asking me to give them everything. They'd be here simply to be with me. "Jessica," I finally said, "let me ask you something. If I didn't have this home, if I had nothing of value, would you still visit me?" She blinked. "Of course, Margaret. What kind of question is that? Then why is it that for months you've only sought me out to discuss the home? Why do you never call just to see how I am? Why does every conversation end with the same request?" Jessica opened her mouth, but no words emerged. Because there was no answer. Or rather, the answer was obvious, and she didn't want to admit it. She remained silent for seconds, then stood. "I think I came at a bad time. We'll talk later." And she left, leaving me alone in that empty room. But I didn't feel alone. I felt liberated. Because every conversation, every manipulation, every lie only confirmed I'd made the right decision. That night, sitting in my new home, I reviewed all documents again. The deed to the new place, the sales receipts for the old one, the recordings I'd made. Everything was in order. Everything was ready. All that remained was the final moment, the confrontation. And I knew it would come soon, because Ryan and Jessica weren't patient, and their desperation would make them stumble. A stumble I was waiting for. I inhaled deeply, drank some hot tea, and mentally prepared myself for what was coming, because the war was just beginning, and this time I had all the weapons. The moment came 2 weeks later. I knew it would eventually happen, that Ryan would lose his patience and appear unannounced, that he'd seek confrontation, force me to give him an answer. And that day finally arrived. It was Saturday morning. I was in my new home, drinking coffee by the window, watching life pass on the street. My phone rang. Ryan. Mother, I'm heading to your place. We need to finish this conversation today. You can't keep avoiding us. I'll be there in 30 minutes. And he disconnected before I could reply. I stared at the phone. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. Pure adrenaline. I'd waited for this moment. I'd prepared for it. And now it was here. I dressed calmly, comfortable pants, a cream-colored blouse, nothing special. Put my hair up, put on shoes, and I left for the old home. Yes, I still had keys. The new owner wasn't moving in until the following week, so technically I could still access it. I arrived before Ryan. I ascended the stairs. I opened the door, and I waited. The home was almost empty. Only a few boxes remained in corners. The echo of my footsteps resonated on bare walls. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and waited. 5 minutes later, I heard hurried footsteps in the hallway. The door burst open. Ryan entered like a hurricane. Jessica was right behind him. Mother, he started to say, but he stopped short when he saw the empty home. His face changed from confusion to alarm in a second. What's happening here? Where's the furniture? Where is everything? I stood slowly. I sold it, I said in a calm voice. You sold the furniture? Jessica asked in a shrill voice. Not just the furniture, I replied. I sold the home too. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan stared at me as if he didn't understand the words he'd just heard. Jessica had turned pale. What did you say? Ryan muttered. I sold the home, I repeated louder this time. 3 weeks ago. The papers are signed. The transfer is complete. The new owner moves in next week. Ryan exploded. How could you sell the home? I already promised it to my wife. Give me the money from the sale now. His voice was a scream. His hands were shaking. Jessica started to cry. But Mother, how could you do this to us? We were counting on this place. We had plans. We had dreams. And you destroyed them. I stood firm. Didn't move a muscle. I looked them straight in the eyes. This home was mine. It wasn't yours. It was never yours, and I could do whatever I wanted with it. Ryan took a step toward me. His face was red with rage. Don't you dare say that. I am your son, your only family. That home was my inheritance. It was the only thing you were going to leave me. Your inheritance, I repeated calmly. Ryan, you're 38 years old. You have employment. You have your health. You have your life ahead of you. And you were already planning what to do with my possessions when I died. That's not being a son. That's being a vulture. Jessica shouted, offended. How dare you speak to him like that? He gave you everything. He took care of you after Arthur died. I let out a bitter laugh. Took care of me? Jessica, your husband visited once monthly. He called only when he needed something. And both of you spent recent years treating me like a burden, like something to be tolerated until it ceased existing. But Mother, Ryan started, his voice softer now, desperate. Jessica and I can't be homeless. We need that money. It's ours by right. By right? I asked, incredulous. What right? The right of being your son. The right of being born. That doesn't give you a right to my life or to what I decide to do with my own possessions. Ryan ran his hands through his hair. He was desperate. His perfect plan had crumbled. Then at least give us the money from the sale. If you already sold it, you have the cash. Give it to us. We can still purchase the house. Please, Jessica begged. It was the first time in years I'd heard her say please. But it wasn't genuine please. It was the please of someone losing and knowing it. Jessica approached me. Margaret, please think about us. Think about the grandchildren you could have. If we don't have a house, how are we going to start a family? How are we going to give you those grandchildren you want so much? The grandchildren I want so much? I repeated softly. Jessica, you never wanted to give me grandchildren. You wanted to use the idea of grandchildren to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty, to force me to surrender everything. She recoiled as if I'd struck her. That's not true. We do want a family, so what happened to the money? Ryan interrupted. Where is it? In my account, I replied. I used part of it to purchase myself a new home, smaller, more comfortable for me. And the rest is invested for my old age, for my peace of mind, for me. Ryan looked at me with pure hatred. You're selfish. A selfish old woman who only thinks about herself. And what did you expect me to do? I shouted back. That I would gift you everything and be left with nothing? That I would live on handouts waiting for you to have the kindness to visit me once yearly? Jessica was sobbing dramatically. But we wanted you with us. We were going to take care of you. A lie, I said firmly. You didn't want to take care of me. You wanted my money. And when you had it, you would have put me in the cheapest nursing facility you could find. Ryan shook his head. You're paranoid. You're inventing things. I'm not inventing anything, I said. Then I took my phone from my pocket. I have proof. Proof of what? Jessica asked, her voice trembling. Of everything. Of every conversation where you discussed me as if I were already dead. Of every plan you made behind my back. Of every cruel word you said, thinking I couldn't hear you. The color drained from Ryan's face. You recorded us? I recorded you, I confirmed. Because I needed to be certain I wasn't imagining things. I needed proof that you truly only saw me as a means to get what you wanted. Ryan took a step toward me, his fists clenched. Give me that phone now. No, I replied, backing away. These recordings are my insurance, just in case you decide to do something foolish. Like what? Jessica asked. Like try to sue me? Like try to take what's mine? Like claim I'm senile or unfit to make decisions? I've seen enough stories to know how this works. Ryan laughed humorlessly. You're insane. Completely insane. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I finally regained my sanity after years of letting you walk all over me. There was a moment of tense silence. The three of us stared at each other. The air was thick with rage, with pain, with truths that had finally surfaced. Then Jessica spoke in a cold voice. "We will never forgive you for this. Never." "I can live with that," I replied. Ryan pointed to the door. "Let's go, Jessica. There's nothing for us here anymore." She followed him, but before leaving, she turned back to me. "I hope that money makes you happy, Margaret, because it's going to cost you your only family." "It already cost me my family a long time ago," I said. "I just hadn't realized it until now." They left, slamming the door. The sound echoed in the empty home. And I stayed there, standing alone. But I didn't feel alone. I felt victorious. I felt free. For the first time in years, I had defended what was mine. I had said no. And I had survived. I sat on the floor again. My legs were shaking from adrenaline. My heart was still pounding. But there was something else, something warm in my chest. It was relief. It was peace. It was the feeling of having reclaimed my life. I took out my phone and looked at the saved recordings. They were my shield, my protection, just in case Ryan tried something legal. Just in case he tried to spin this story another way. But something told me he wouldn't. Because he knew he'd lost. And losers rarely admit defeat publicly. I stayed there a while longer, silently saying goodbye to this place that had been my home for so many years. But I didn't feel sadness. I felt gratitude. Because this home had given me shelter, and now it had given me freedom. I got up from the floor and walked to the window. From there I could see the street. I saw Ryan and Jessica leaving the building. He was walking fast, his fists clenched. She was behind him, wiping her tears dramatically. They got in the car, but they didn't start it right away. I saw them arguing inside. Jessica was waving her hands wildly. Ryan hit the steering wheel hard. And then something unexpected happened. The car didn't move. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. They were still there. And suddenly, I understood. They were coming back. They weren't finished. They were going to try one last time. And sure enough, the car door opened. Ryan got out. He looked up toward the window where I was, and he started walking back to the building. I stepped away from the window. I took a deep breath. And I waited. The footsteps on the stairs sounded heavy, tired. When the door opened, only Ryan came in. Jessica had stayed in the car. My son looked different now. The rage was gone from his face. There was something worse, desperation. "Mother," he said in a hoarse voice, "please, we need to talk calmly." He didn't look me in the eye. He just stood in the middle of the empty home, his shoulders slumped. "Then let's talk," I said, crossing my arms. He took a deep breath. "Okay, you're right. We were insistent, too pushy. But we genuinely need that money. It's not a whim. It's our only chance to have something of our own, to build a life. And I thought that you, as my mother, would want to help me with that." "As your mother?" I repeated. "Ryan, I helped you my entire life. I gave you everything I could. I paid for your college. I supported you when you changed majors 4 times. I lent you money you never repaid. And now that I finally decide to do something for myself, for my future, I'm selfish." He shook his head. "It's not that. It's just that this money is different. It's substantial. It's enough to change our lives. And you're already old. You've already lived your life. We're just starting." His words hit me like stones. "You've already lived your life," as if at 65 I was no longer entitled to anything. As if I should just sit and wait for death while they enjoyed what I'd built. "Ryan," I said in a firm voice, I am 65 years old, not 85, not 95. I could still live another 20 or 30 years. And I am not going to spend them depending on anyone. I am not going to be left with nothing just so you can have everything. But that money belongs to me, he yelled. It's my inheritance. No, I replied, raising my voice too. An inheritance is what I leave you when I die, not what you take while I'm alive. He ran his hands over his face. He was on the verge of collapse. Then at least give me half. $50,000. We could make a down payment with that. I'm not asking for all of it. Just a portion. And we'll repay you. I swear. I laughed humorlessly. Repay me with what? You already owe me $12,000 from previous loans you never repaid. Ryan fell silent because he knew it was true. Over the years, he'd come to me for money dozens of times. For the car, for the wedding, for courses, for emergencies that were never really emergencies. And he always promised to repay it, but he never did. And I never insisted because he was my son, and a mother doesn't charge her son. Or so I thought. But now I saw the truth. It wasn't generosity. It was weakness. It was allowing myself to be used over and over. Ryan, I said calmer, I am not giving you the money. Not all of it and not part of it. That money is for me. For my peace of mind. To know that if I get sick, if I need help, if something happens, I have the means to take care of it. Because clearly I cannot count on you. That's not fair, he said, his voice breaking. I would be there if you needed me. I really would. Just like you've been there these past 7 years? I asked sarcastically. Visiting me once monthly, calling only when you needed something, treating me like old furniture that was in your way. He opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. Because there was no defense. There was no excuse. And we both knew it. Mother, he finally whispered. Please, just this once, I'm begging you. Give me the money. Seeing my son beg should have softened me. I should have felt pity. But I felt nothing. Because his pleas weren't out of love. They were out of desperation, out of greed, out of fear of losing what was never his. No, I said with finality, and now I need you to leave. I have things to do. He looked at me in disbelief. You're kicking me out. I am asking you to respect my decision and leave, I replied. Ryan took a step toward me. His face changed again. The desperation turned into something darker. A threat. You know what, Mother? Maybe you're right. Maybe you're not my responsibility anymore. So when you're old, when you're sick, when you need help, don't come looking for me, because I won't be there for you either. His words were meant to hurt me, meant to make me afraid, but they only confirmed what I already knew, that he had never been there for me, and he never would be. I can live with that, I said calmly. But wait, I said as he was about to leave. There is something else you need to know. A second piece of news. Ryan stopped. He turned around slowly. What else could there be? He asked, weary. I took out my phone. I swiped the screen until I found what I was looking for, and I showed it to him. He squinted, trying to see. It was a document, a legal document. What is that? He asked, moving closer. It's my will, I replied. I updated it last week. Ryan grabbed the phone from my hands and started to read. I watched his face change, watched the confusion turn to shock, watched the shock turn to horror. This can't be real, he muttered. It's completely real, I confirmed. Signed before a notary. Completely legal. The will specified that the new home I bought, plus all the money I had left, would be donated to a charity for abandoned seniors when I died. Ryan would receive nothing, absolutely nothing. "You're disinheriting me," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm teaching you a lesson," I replied. "The lesson that family isn't about waiting for inheritances. It's about love, about respect, about being present, and you did none of that." He started to shake. His whole body was shaking. His hands, his legs, even his voice trembled when he spoke. "But Mother, Jessica and I can't be homeless. You have jobs. You have savings. You have incomes," I said. "Of course we do. You have all of that. You just don't have my money. And that is your real desperation." Ryan dropped the phone. He put his hands to his head. And for the first time in this whole situation, I saw him truly broken. It wasn't an act. It wasn't manipulation. It was the genuine collapse of someone who has just lost everything he expected to get without effort. "How could you do this to me?" he whispered. "How could I?" I repeated, "Ryan, I didn't do anything to you. You did this to yourself. You spent years treating me like an ATM, like something that was only useful when you needed money. You never asked how I was. You were never interested in my life. You never saw me as a person, only as a resource. And now that the resource has dried up, you fall apart. Because you never learned to stand on your own 2 feet. Because you always expected me to solve your life for you." He slid to the floor, sitting with his back against the wall, just as I had been minutes ago. But our postures meant opposite things. I had been in a position of power. He was in a position of defeat. "You're going to regret this," he said, not looking at me. "Someday you'll be alone, sick, scared. And you'll regret this. Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe I'll find peace knowing I lived my last years with dignity, that I didn't let myself be used, that I reclaimed my worth." He let out a bitter laugh. "Your worth? What worth do you have if nobody loves you? If your only son hates you?" "I'd rather you hate me for defending myself," I said, "than love me only for what you can get from me." Ryan stood up slowly. He looked at me one last time, and in his eyes I saw something I had never seen before. Total surrender. "I hope you're happy with your decision," he said, dragging his words. "I hope that money keeps you warm at night when you're completely alone." "I was already alone, Ryan. You were just taking up space." He walked out without closing the door. I heard him descend the stairs. I heard the car start. And I heard it drive away. The silence that remained was absolute. I sat on the floor again. My legs wouldn't support me. My whole body was shaking from released tension. But I didn't cry. I didn't feel sadness. I felt something strange, something I hadn't felt in years. I felt complete, as if a part of me that had been dormant had finally awakened. As if I had recovered something I thought I'd lost forever, my dignity. I stayed in that empty home for almost an hour, sitting on the floor, staring at bare walls, processing everything that had just happened. I had no regrets. Not for a single second did I doubt my decision, but there was something in the air. A feeling of finality, of closure. This place had been my home for 30 years. I had cooked thousands of meals here. I had mourned Arthur's death here. I had grown old in loneliness here. And now, here I had reclaimed my freedom. I stood up slowly. I walked through each empty room. I touched the walls with my fingertips. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for everything." And I walked out, closing the door behind me for the last time. When I got to my new home, the contrast was absolute. The windows let in natural light. The space was small but cozy. Everything smelled new, of possibilities, of beginnings. I made myself some tea. I sat by the window. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled genuinely. Not a forced smile, not a polite smile, but a smile of real satisfaction. I had done something for myself. I had chosen my well-being over the manipulation of others, and that felt powerful. The phone rang, interrupting my moment of peace. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but I finally did. Hello. On the other end was a female voice I didn't recognize. Mrs. Collins, this is Lauren, Jessica's sister. I need to talk to you. My stomach tightened. Lauren. Jessica had told her sister everything. And now came round two, the attempt to make me feel guilty through someone else. Go ahead, I replied in a neutral voice. Mrs. Collins, Jessica told me what happened, and I want you to know that I am very disappointed in you. How could you do that to your own son? He needed you and you turned your back on him. I took a deep breath. Lauren, with all due respect, you don't know the whole story. You only know the version your sister told you. The version where I'm the villain. But there's much more to it, she snorted. What more could there be? You sold the home your son needed. That's all I need to know. My son didn't need that home, I replied firmly. My son wanted that home. There's a huge difference. Lauren kept talking. Her voice was harsh, accusatory. Jessica is devastated. Ryan is devastated. You destroyed their dreams, their future plans. And for what? To purchase yourself a smaller home and hoard money you won't even live to spend. That is pure selfishness. I listened to her words without interrupting. I let her say everything she had to say. And when she finally fell silent, waiting for my response, I spoke with a calm that surprised even me. Lauren, I understand you want to defend your sister. It's natural, but let me ask you something. When was the last time Ryan and Jessica visited me without asking for something? When was the last time they called just to see how I was? When was the last time they treated me like a person and not like a bank? There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end. They have their lives, Lauren finally said with less conviction. Their jobs, their responsibilities. Exactly, I replied. They have their lives, and I have mine. And my life does not consist of sacrificing myself eternally so they can live comfortably. Lauren tried to argue more. But Mrs. Collins, you're the mother. Parents should always help their children. They should always be there. I was there for 38 years, I said, raising my voice slightly. I gave my son everything I could. But there comes a time when children must stand on their own. And if at 38, Ryan is still expecting me to solve his life, then I failed as a mother. But I am not going to continue failing by allowing him to use me. Lauren disconnected without saying goodbye. And I stared at the phone. I knew it wouldn't be the last call. That Jessica and Ryan would try to use other people to pressure me, to make me feel guilty, to break me. But I had already made my decision, and nobody was going to make me change my mind. That night, before sleeping, I checked my bank account online. There was the money, over $125,000. It was more money than I had ever had at one time in my entire life. And it was all mine. Nobody could take it from me. Nobody could demand it. It was my safety net. My freedom materialized in numbers on a screen. I slept peacefully that night. No nightmares, no anxiety. Just peace. The following days were strangely normal. I focused on setting up my new home. I bought plants for the windows. I hung light cream curtains. One organized my books on the small bookshelf. Everything I did reminded me that this space was mine, that nobody would come to judge it, that nobody would come to tell me I should change this or that. It was my refuge. My kingdom. A week later, I received a text message from Ryan. It was long, full of carefully chosen words. Mother, it began. I've had time to think, and I think we both said hurtful things. I know I failed you as a son. I know I haven't been present as I should have. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. You're my mother and you always will be. I'd like to talk so we can fix this. I read the message 3 times, searching for sincerity between the lines. But I didn't find it, because at no point did it say, I'm sorry. At no point did it acknowledge the real damage he had done. It was just a generic apology. One more attempt to get closer to see if he could get something. I didn't reply. I simply put the phone away and went on with my day. 2 days later, another message arrived. This one was from Jessica. Margaret, please don't close the door on us. I know we made mistakes, but everyone deserves a second chance. Ryan is in a very bad way. He's barely eating, barely sleeping. He keeps thinking about how to fix things with you. Please give him that chance. I didn't reply to that one either, because I knew it was theater, emotional manipulation, a last-ditch attempt to soften me. One afternoon, while I was sitting in a park near my new home, I saw an older woman sitting on a bench. She was alone, feeding pigeons with breadcrumbs. I walked over and sat next to her. It's a beautiful day, I said. She smiled. Beautiful, she confirmed. I come here every day. It's my moment of peace. I asked her if she had family. She nodded. 4 children, 7 grandchildren. But I barely see them. They're busy with their lives. And I understand. I don't want to be a burden. Her words reminded me of myself months ago. You are not a burden, I told her. You are a person, and you deserve to be treated as one. She looked at me, surprised, and then she smiled with tears in her eyes. Thank you. I needed to hear that. We talked for almost an hour. She told me her life story, her struggles, her disappointments. And I told her mine. I told her about Ryan, about Jessica, about the home, about my decision. And she listened without judgment. When I finished, she took my hand. You did the right thing, she said firmly. I wish I'd had your courage. But I'm afraid. Afraid of being left completely alone. Being alone is not the worst thing that can happen, I told her. The worst thing is being surrounded by people who make you feel alone. She nodded slowly, as if those words had touched something deep inside her. We said goodbye with an embrace. And as I walked back home, I felt something new. Connection, empathy, purpose. I had spent so much time focused on my broken relationship with Ryan that I had forgotten there were other people in the world. Other stories, other solitudes I could accompany. That night, I made a decision. I would look for activity groups for seniors, classes, workshops, whatever. I needed to build a new life. A life that didn't revolve around my son. I went online and started searching. I found a watercolor workshop given on Wednesday and Friday afternoons. I had never painted in my life, but something in the description caught my eye. Expression without judgment, creativity without pressure, community without commitment. I signed up before I could change my mind. The first workshop was in 4 days, and although I was nervous, I also felt excited. An excitement I hadn't felt in years. The excitement of starting something new, of discovering a part of myself I had never explored. Meanwhile, the messages from Ryan and Jessica continued to arrive, more desperate each time, more manipulative. Mother, please. You can't ignore us forever. We're your family. Margaret, Ryan is considering therapy. He really wants to change. He just needs your support. Mother, at least answer so we know you're okay. We're worried. Every message was an attempt to reopen the door I had closed. But I was no longer the same woman who could be convinced with pretty words. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had finally learned that saying no doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person with boundaries. And boundaries are not walls. They are doors. Doors that you decide when to open and when to keep closed. On Sunday, I received one last call. This time it was from a number I recognized. It was Vera, a distant cousin I hadn't seen in years. Margaret, she said in a serious voice. Ryan called me. He told me what happened. And I want to tell you that I understand your position, but I also want to ask you to consider forgiveness. Family is the most important thing, and grudges only hurt you. I listened to her words. I took a deep breath, and I replied, Vera, it's not a grudge. It's a decision. The decision not to allow them to keep hurting me. And if family is so important, why didn't Ryan show it when he could? Why does he only remember family when he needs something? She didn't know what to say, and I took advantage of the silence. I appreciate your call, Vera, but this decision is already made. And I disconnected. Wednesday came faster than I expected. It was the day of my first painting class. I woke up early. I had a calm breakfast. I got dressed in comfortable clothes, gray pants, a soft ivory-colored blouse. Nothing special, but I felt good. When I arrived at the place, it was a small, light-filled room. There were 7 other people, all women, all over 50. The teacher's name was Dorothy. She had white hair pulled back in a messy bun and a warm smile that made you feel immediately welcome. Good morning, she said in a soft voice. Today we are not going to worry about making something perfect. We are just going to let our hands express what we feel. And so my new life began. At first I felt clumsy. The brush trembled in my hand. The colors mixed in strange ways on the canvas. But Dorothy walked between the tables saying beautiful things. There are no mistakes in art, only discoveries. After an hour, something inside me relaxed. I stopped thinking. I stopped judging every stroke. And I just painted. I don't know what I was creating. It was abstract, chaotic, but it was mine. And when the class ended, I felt lighter, as if I had released something I had been holding in for years. The other women also shared their work. Each one had a story. Each one had her battles. And nobody judged anyone. It was a safe space. A space where I could just be Margaret. Not someone's mother. Not someone's widow. Just me. After class, one of the women approached me. Her name was Beatrice. She had short curly hair and a contagious laugh. It's your first time, isn't it? She asked. Yes, I replied. You can tell. But in a good way. It looks like you have a lot to get out. We laughed together. She invited me to get coffee. We went to a nearby coffee shop. And as we drank our hot cups, Beatrice told me her story. She had been married for 42 years. Her husband died 4 years ago, and her children lived in other cities. They visited once yearly if she was lucky. At first, I got really depressed, she told me. I felt like my life was over. But one day, I decided that if nobody was going to live my life for me, then I would have to do it. And here I am. Painting, dancing, living. Her words resonated deeply with me. It was exactly what I was doing. reclaiming my life. Beatrice became my first real friend in years. We started getting together after every class. Sometimes we would walk in the park, and we always talked about everything, about nothing. No filters, no judgments. It was liberating to have someone who understood what it meant to reinvent yourself at this age. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of peace, of new routines, of days filled with small joys. But of course, the peace couldn't last forever. One Thursday afternoon, someone knocked on the door of my home. I wasn't expecting visitors. I looked through the peephole and my heart stopped for a second. It was Jessica. I opened the door just a crack. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not inviting her in. Jessica looked different. Thinner, more tired. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes. "Margaret, please. I just want to talk. 5 minutes, that's all." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but another part was curious. What could she want now? I opened the door fully, but stayed in the doorway. "Talk," I said, crossing my arms. Jessica took a deep breath. "I came to apologize. For real. Ryan doesn't know I'm here. He's angry. He says he'll never forgive you. But I can't live like this. I can't live with this tension, with this grudge. I need you to know that I'm sorry, that I understand why you did what you did." Her speech was prepared. "You're sorry," I repeated. "Or you're sorry you lost access to the money." Jessica looked down. "I know you think we only cared about the money, and maybe at first we did. But we weren't bad people, Margaret. We were just desperate, scared of the future, and we saw your home as the solution to all our problems. But that didn't give us the right to treat you the way we did." At least she was admitting something. That was more than Ryan had done. "I appreciate your apology, Jessica, but it doesn't change anything." She looked up quickly. "But we could start over. We could build a real relationship, without interests, without pressure, just as family." I sighed. "I wish I could believe you, but building trust again takes time. And honestly, I don't know if I have that time or that energy." Jessica nodded slowly. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that not all of us are like Ryan, that I am sorry, and that if you ever decide to give us another chance, I'll be here." She turned to leave, but before she went down the stairs, I turned to her. "Jessica," she stopped. "If you really want to show me you've changed, don't do it with words. Do it with actions, and not toward me. Do it for yourself. Build your life without depending on inheritances, without expecting others to solve your problems. That's the only way I could ever see you as someone truly different." She nodded, and she left. I don't know if she would really change. Probably not. But at least she had tried something Ryan never did. Acknowledge her mistake. That night, I sat and thought about everything that had happened in the last month. I had sold my home. I had confronted my son. I had set boundaries. I had started painting. I had made a friend. I had reclaimed my dignity. And although there were still moments of doubt, of sadness, of wondering if I had done the right thing, deep down I knew the answer. I had done exactly what I needed to do. I had saved myself, because nobody else was going to. The following days continued peacefully. The painting classes became my favorite time of the week. Dorothy taught us different techniques: watercolor, oil, acrylic. And each time I felt freer, more myself. One afternoon, while I was painting, Dorothy came over to my table. Margaret, she said softly, can I ask you something? Of course. Have you noticed how your painting has changed since you started? I looked at her confused. How so? At first you painted with small strokes, fearful, controlled, but now your strokes are broad, confident, free. That speaks to an internal change, a liberation. I felt a lump in my throat, because she was right. I had changed, and that change was reflected even in things I hadn't noticed. I went through something difficult recently, I told her. I had to make decisions that hurt, but they were necessary. Dorothy smiled. The best decisions always hurt at first, but then they give you wings. Those words stayed with me. They give you wings. Yes, that was exactly how I felt. As if after years of being tied down, I could finally fly. Beatrice and I started planning a short trip. Just a weekend. To a nearby city. To see museums. To walk without a destination. To enjoy life without asking permission. It was something small, but it meant everything. It meant I could make plans. That my life was not over. That there were still adventures to be lived. When I told Beatrice about my situation with Ryan, she didn't judge me. She just embraced me and said, children don't understand that parents have a right to live too. They think we were born just to serve them. But you taught them something important. You taught them boundaries. 3 months had passed since the confrontation. 3 months of tranquility, of new routines, of painting, of friendship with Beatrice, of afternoons in the park, of nights reading on my small but comfortable couch. My life had found a rhythm that made me happy. It wasn't an explosive happiness. It was a quiet happiness, deep, real, but as it often happens, just when you get used to the peace, the past comes knocking on your door again. It was a Saturday morning. I was making coffee when the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, and this time it wasn't Jessica. It was Ryan, alone, without his wife. He looked different, thinner, with an unkempt beard, with dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. I hesitated before opening, but something in his posture made me do it. I opened the door but stayed in the doorway, blocking the entrance. What do you want, Ryan? He held up his hands in a gesture of peace. I just want to talk. No yelling, no demands. Just talk, please. There was something in his voice that sounded different. More broken. More real. I let him in. We sat in the small living room. He looked around with a strange expression. This is your new place? He asked. Yes, it's nice. Small but enough for me. He nodded silently. There was a long, awkward silence. And then he spoke. Mother, I came to tell you that you were right. About everything. I raised an eyebrow, surprised. Ryan never admitted his mistakes. Go on, I said. He ran his hands over his face. The last 3 months have been the worst of my life. Jessica and I almost separated. We lost the house we wanted. I had problems at work from being so distracted. And all because I couldn't accept that I had lost something that was never mine. I stayed quiet, letting him talk. I went to therapy, he continued. The therapist made me see things I didn't want to accept. He made me see that I had treated you like a resource, like something I could use when I needed it. I never saw you as a person with your own needs, with a right to your own life, and that's unforgivable. I felt something move in my chest. It wasn't relief. Not yet. But it was something. I'm glad you're going to therapy, I said carefully. That's a good step? Ryan looked up. There were tears in his eyes. I didn't come to ask you for money. I didn't come to ask you to change your will. I came just to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. And that I understand if you can never forgive me. His words sounded sincere. For the first time in years, they sounded genuine. But I had learned to be cautious. I appreciate your apology, Ryan, but apologies don't erase years of mistreatment. They don't erase the pain you caused me. He nodded. I know, and I don't expect them to. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did, and that I'm trying to be better. Not for you, not even for Jessica, but for myself, because I don't like the person I had become. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, and then I asked him something I had wanted to know for a long time. Ryan, why did you never visit me? Why did it always seem like an obligation to spend time with me? He took a deep breath. Because you reminded me of Dad, and his death hurt me so much that I preferred to stay away from everything that reminded me of him, including you. I know it sounds horrible. I know it's selfish, but it's the truth. His words hit me hard, because I finally had an answer. It wasn't a good answer, but at least it was honest. I miss Arthur too, I said softly. Every day. But pushing me away didn't make the pain any less. It just made me feel more alone. He nodded, tears rolling down his face. I wish I could go back in time, he said in a broken voice. Do things differently. But I can't. The only thing I can do is try to be better from here on out. If you ever decide to give me another chance, I promise it will be different. But if not, I understand that too. I looked at my son crying in front of me, and I felt something complex. It wasn't total forgiveness. Not yet, but it wasn't hatred either. It was something in between. It was an acknowledgement of his humanity, his flaws, his capacity for change. I need time, I told him finally. A lot of time. I can't just forget everything and trust you again. But I appreciate that you came, that you were honest. That's more than I expected. He got up to leave. Before opening the door, he turned. Can I call you? Every once in a while, just to see how you are, without asking for anything. I thought for a moment. You can. But if you ever try to manipulate me again, if you ever treat me like you did before, there will be no more chances. He nodded. I understand. And he left. When I closed the door, I stood there for a long time, processing, feeling. I didn't know if Ryan would really change, if this time was different, but at least he had taken the first step. He had acknowledged his mistake, and that was more than Jessica had done, more than anyone had done. That afternoon, I went to my painting class. Dorothy noticed something different in me. Did something happen? She asked. Yes, I replied. My son came to apologize, and I don't know how to feel about it. She smiled with understanding. You don't have to know how to feel. Feelings are complex. They can coexist. You can be hurt and hopeful at the same time. I painted that day with a different intensity. I used dark colors mixed with bright ones, representing exactly what I felt. The darkness of the past mixed with the light of a possible future. When I finished, Beatrice came over to see my work. It's beautiful, she said, and sad, and hopeful, all at the same time. Exactly, I replied. That's how I feel. That night, alone in my home, I thought a lot about forgiveness. About whether it was weak to forgive someone who had hurt you so much, or if it was strong. And I came to a conclusion. Forgiveness was not for Ryan. Forgiveness was for me. To release the weight I had been carrying. To be able to move forward without resentment poisoning my soul. But forgiving did not mean forgetting. It did not mean allowing him to hurt me again. It meant letting go and moving on. The following days were lighter, as if something heavy had been lifted from my shoulders. Ryan called me twice that week. Short conversations, simple, asking how I was, briefly telling me about his day, not asking for anything, not manipulating. And although I still kept my guard up, I began to feel that maybe, just maybe, there was hope. Beatrice and I finally took our trip. We went to a coastal city. We walked on the beach. We visited art galleries. We ate seafood in little restaurants. And I laughed. I really laughed. With my whole body. With my whole soul. I laughed in a way I hadn't laughed in years. And in one of those moments, walking along the shore with my feet in the cold water, Beatrice told me something I will never forget. "Margaret," she said, taking my hand, "I'm proud of you, of how you stood up for yourself, of how you took your life back. You are braver than you think." Her words filled me with an emotion that was hard to describe, because for so long I had felt weak, cowardly, invisible, but now someone saw me as brave. And maybe she was right. Maybe I had been brave all this time without realizing it. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting in spite of it. And I had done exactly that. That night, lying in the hotel room, staring at the ceiling, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt gratitude. Gratitude for my life, for my decisions, for my freedom, for everything I had lived through and survived. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what happened with Ryan, whether our relationship was repaired or not, I would be okay. Because I finally had myself. 6 months had passed since that day of the confrontation. Half a year of learning to live again. Of discovering who I was without the chains of guilt, without the weight of others' expectations. It was a Sunday morning. The sun came through my window, illuminating the plants that now filled every corner of my small home. I got up without rushing. I made my coffee, and I sat by the window as I did every morning. But this time there was something different in the air. A feeling of fullness, of complete closure. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Beatrice. "Ready for the exhibition today?" I smiled. Today was a special day. Dorothy had organized a small exhibition of her students' work, and I had decided to participate. I dressed with care, an olive green dress I had bought the week before. I did my hair. I put on light makeup, and I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was different from the one 6 months ago. There was something in her eyes, strength, peace, recovered dignity. I arrived at the art studio an hour early. My 3 paintings were already hanging on the wall. The first was dark, full of grays and blacks. It represented my life before. The second was chaotic, bright colors mixed with shadows. It represented the conflict, the awakening. And the third was luminous, full of yellows and oranges. It represented my present, my freedom. Dorothy came over with a huge smile. "Margaret, your works tell a complete story. It's beautiful to see your evolution." People started to arrive. Other students, family, friends. Beatrice arrived with a bouquet of flowers for me. "I'm so proud of you," she said, embracing me tight. We walked among the artworks. Each one told a different story. Each woman had put her battles onto those canvases. And there was something powerful in that, in seeing how pain could be transformed into beauty, in seeing how creativity healed us. I was explaining the meaning of my second painting to a woman when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Mother." I turned around slowly. Ryan was standing in the doorway, alone, with a small bouquet of wildflowers in his hands. He looked nervous, insecure, as if he didn't know if he was welcome. I walked toward him with measured steps. "What are you doing here?" I asked without hostility, but with caution. "You told me you had this exhibition," he replied, "and I wanted to come. I wanted to see what you've been doing. If you'll let me." I looked into his eyes, searching for ulterior motives, but I only saw genuine curiosity. "It's fine. You can stay." His face lit up with relief. We walked together to my paintings. He observed them in silence for a long time, and then he spoke in a soft voice. "This first one is how you felt before, isn't it?" I nodded. "And this third one is how you feel now." I nodded again. He pointed to the middle one, the chaotic one. "And this is me. I'm the chaos that interrupted your darkness, but also the one that pushed you toward the light." His words surprised me with their depth. "I hadn't thought of it that way," I admitted. "But you're right." Ryan turned to me. "Mother, I've thought a lot these past few months. I've worked on myself, and I realized something. You didn't take anything from me. You gave me something I never had. You gave me an example of what it means to stand up for yourself, of what it means to live with dignity. And even though it hurt at the time, now I understand." I felt a lump in my throat. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "I just wanted you to know. And I wanted to give you this." He handed me the flowers. "They're not much, but I picked them out myself, without Jessica's help, without consulting anyone, just thinking of you." I took the flowers with trembling hands. They were simple but beautiful. "Thank you," I whispered. Ryan stayed at the exhibition for 2 hours. He talked with Beatrice, with Dorothy, with other students. And for the first time, I saw him genuinely interested in my life, in what I had built. Before he left, he embraced me. It was a different embrace. Not the mechanical embrace from before. It was a real embrace, with feeling. "I'm proud of you, Mother. And I'm sorry it took me so long to tell you." When he left, Beatrice came over. "That's your son?" I nodded. "He's changing. Or at least he's trying." She smiled. "Sometimes people need to lose something to value it. Maybe your courage taught him something important." "Maybe," I replied. "Only time will tell. But it's not my responsibility to fix him anymore. That's his own battle. And I have mine. My battle is to keep growing, to keep living." The exhibition ended at sunset. Dorothy gathered us all and gave a short speech. "Each of you came here with your wounds, with your stories, with your fears. But look at what you created. Beauty from pain, strength from vulnerability, and community from loneliness. I am honored to have been part of your journeys." We all applauded with tears in our eyes. That night, back in my home, I put Ryan's flowers in a vase. I placed them by the window where the morning sun would light them up, and I sat and thought about the entire journey. I had lost the relationship I had with my son, but I had gained something more valuable. I had gained myself. I had recovered my voice, my power, my right to exist, not just for others, but for me. I didn't know what would happen with Ryan, if he had really changed or if it was just a temporary attempt. But it didn't matter as much anymore, because my happiness no longer depended on him. It no longer depended on anyone but me. And that was liberating. A week later, I received a letter. It was from Jessica. I opened it with curiosity. "Margaret," it began, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to reply. I just want you to know that Ryan and I separated, not because of you, but because we both finally realized we had built a relationship on the wrong foundations, on expectations, on dependency. Now we are both working on ourselves. And maybe someday, if fate wills it, we can be better people. Thank you for teaching me that saying no is also an act of love, self-love." I folded the letter slowly. I didn't feel joy at their separation, but I didn't feel sadness either. I felt neutral. I felt that everyone was finding their own path, and that was okay. The following months continued at their quiet pace. Ryan called me once weekly. Simple conversations. No demands. No manipulations. Just genuine questions about my life. And I shared. I told him about my paintings, about Beatrice, about the books I was reading. And he listened. He really listened. I don't know if our relationship would ever be like it was before, but honestly, I didn't want it to be. I wanted something new, something healthier, something built on mutual respect and not on obligation. A year after the confrontation, I was sitting in the same park where I had met that woman feeding pigeons, and I saw her again, sitting on the same bench. I approached with a smile. "Do you remember me?" She looked up and her eyes lit up. "The brave woman. Of course I remember you." We sat together. I told her everything that had happened. She listened attentively, and when I finished, she took my hand. "You did more than save yourself. You saved me too. After our conversation, I took your advice. I set boundaries with my children. And you know what? Some got angry, but others understood. And now I have a more honest relationship with them. Thank you." Her words filled me with a deep emotion, because I had made a difference, not just in my life, but in someone else's. That night before sleeping, I wrote in a journal I had started to keep. Today marks 1 year since I made the hardest decision of my life. 1 year since I chose my dignity over the approval of others. And I can say with total honesty that I do not regret it. I learned that love is not constant sacrifice, that family is not blind obligation, that forgiveness is not forgetting, and that old age is not the end. It is just another stage. A stage where I can finally be who I was always meant to be. I belong to no one now. I am just myself. And that is more than enough. It is everything. I closed the journal. I turned off the light. And I fell asleep with a smile. The smile of a free woman.